Hello, my friends. I hope you're doing well because today I am talking with Natanya Mandel and we are talking about migraines and chronic headache pain and how a lot of people suffer from it and feel alone and isolated, and you don't need to be. And she is a migraine coach. So, things that you can do to really manage your pain so that you can do all the things you want to do with your life. Have a listen. Let me know what you think. Let me know your biggest oh my gosh moment and share this with anyone that you know who might maybe benefit from a migraine coach and help them feel better and have their fabulous life. Take care, my friends. I will see you soon. Hi, my friends. Welcome. This is the Back to Me podcast, and this is Heather, and I am super excited that you're here. You are going to hear some tips and some tricks and some ideas to help you live your happiest and healthiest self. I call it Back to Me because when you are taking care of yourself, back to me, then you can take better care of others, and we can all make the world a better place. This is Wellness Your Way, and I am super happy that you're here. Hello, my friend. Welcome. I hope you're having an outstanding day. This is Heather. This is the Back to Me podcast. And today, wow, I didn't even have to go very far. I didn't even have to exit the postal code to find an awesome human to talk to today. And today I am talking with another awesome human about things to help you have your most fabulous life. Really, that's our intention, right? So today I'm talking to Natanya Mandel, who is a migraine coach, which is nothing that I thought knew exists, that I never would have thought of existed. But when I think about it, it makes sense. Natanya, thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here.
Yes, and we were very surprised the first time we had a conversation. We live very close to each other, which, it's a small world, but holy cow, just around the corner. That's fabulous. And um, even though nobody would guess it from your accent, but that's okay. That's okay. Toronto is a multiverse of peoples, right?
It is.
Um, and migraine coach, like how
Mm.
does someone become a migraine coach? What is that?
Oh, yeah. So I work with people who have headache and migraine disorders, whether they're diagnosed or not, I suppose. And I basically meet people at where they're at with their condition and help them um, to really find ways to live their best life and move into the life that they want more. So there's a lot of things that we feel we're missing out on when we have a condition like migraine or other headache disorders, um, and but there and there's a lot of lack of treatment, or a lot of we miss out on a lot of treatment options, and so I help people to work with their treatment team and improve their own processes in their own lives to improve the quality of their day-to-day living.
How did you get into, like, is there something you have to do to become a migraine coach? Like, what would draw you into that kind of world?
So for me, I mean, I don't know that there's too many other people doing what I do specifically, but for me, my background's in the nonprofit sector. So my background is counselling, as in crisis counselling, and working with various people from lots of different backgrounds and disadvantaged bits of the community, mostly in Australia. And then when I moved to Canada, I retrained to be a coach, and I did lots of different trainings and courses and became accredited as a coach. And while I was researching who I wanted to work with, it suddenly dawned on me that I'd given all of this, expertise to lots of different members of the community, but I'd never worked with members of my own community, and that is people who have this condition that I have. And it's a huge community. Headache disorders are very common. Everybody knows someone with migraine or headache or whatever. And so I thought, oh, wouldn't it be great to provide this to people, to provide this service to people who have migraine? And when I was, a 24-year-old, I would have loved to have a coach to help me navigate the healthcare system, to get better healthcare, to manage my own life and how I was approaching things myself so that I could have a better quality of life and participate more fully in my life in a healthier way. So that's what I decided to do, and that's kind of how I got to it. So it's for me, always having been in the helping professions, I suppose, and then just suddenly having this epiphany of, well, I would like to provide this for members of my own community.
Right. That's awesome. Well, it's not awesome that you suffer from migraines, but awesome that you are offering help to that community. And because I don't think a lot of people know the difference of the different kinds of headaches, because I will hear people say, "Oh, I've got a migraine."
Mm.
But migraine is a very specific kind of headache, and some people just think a bad headache is a migraine when it could just be a bad headache, right? So, do you
Right.
help people kind of navigate what the different kinds of headaches are?
Well, to a degree. I mean, I'm not qualified. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a neurologist, so I
No.
can't diagnose. But there is an international headache classification guideline that doctors should be using and are supposed to be using. And so, we all have access to that. It's online, there are 300 different types of headache disorders. Migraine is one type of headache disorder, and within migraine, there's quite a lot of different subtypes of migraine. So I might help someone by saying, well, it could be X or it could be Y, but there are a lot of types of headache disorders that I've never heard of. So so I could be,
Maybe that's
clutching
a good thing.
yeah, definitely. So, because there are so many of them, and I'm not a doctor. So, but if it is migraine, or if it's not necessarily one of the rare types, or if it's something more commonly heard of, then, I might say, well, you might want to discuss X, Y, and Z with your doctor, and that might make them think, oh, is it that, or is it actually something else? Um, you might want to ask your doctor for a referral to a headache specialist or whatever, and then you can hopefully get some treatment options, some strategies, more specialized care for your condition,
Right.
because migraine specifically is a specific set of headache disorders, and it's not just a headache. It's a neurological disorder, and there are a whole lot of other symptoms that go with this disorder that aren't actually to do with pain at all, but are neurological symptoms such as fatigue, changes to mood, dizziness, GI tract changes, urinating more frequently, confusion, brain fog, like a whole lot of other symptoms that can affect you. And each person's experience, and some are quite rare, some are quite common. So it's when they're checking out do you have migraine or do you have something else? There will be things that they will be looking for to try and classify what it is that you are actually experiencing, and then what subtype you're experiencing.
And I guess, I mean, I had from a pain management class when I was in massage therapy school, my knowledge of migraines was, it had vascular involvement, which is just, one of the things that there's so many things, but it's interesting that sometimes we just as humans like to label things, but do you think that finding out exactly the right type or kind changes how you approach it? Or maybe, like if you know one thing, then this is what we do. If it's something else, we do something else. Or how does it change as they find out more about what's going on with them?
Yeah, I think it can really help. Like with any condition that we have, it really can be validating to know what's going on with you, and to know it's not all in my head in quotation marks. It's a real thing. It is. I'm not making it up. Your family then knows you're not making it up. If you're canceling quite frequently, you're not. It's not for no reason. You're not
Right.
overstating things, and it's nice to know that there's a condition and it's being researched and they're looking for treatments, they're looking for cures. There is no cure at the moment, but there's more and more treatments becoming available all the time. We don't necessarily have access to them all yet, but in Canada, there's more and more coming through, and so there's lots of hope out there. And so I think certainly having a diagnosis, in some ways, it's like, oh no, that's a horrible thing to be diagnosed with. But in other ways, it's like there's a lot of hope because there's a lot of new research. There's a lot of new knowledge, that's being put into all of this, and so there's going to be more and more that we can do for ourselves to improve where we're at with it. Whereas if we're in the dark, it's much harder to treat what's going
Right.
on with ourselves.
I did find it frustrating probably 20 years ago. I don't think I was having migraines, but I didn't actually ever get it diagnosed because when I asked my doctor, they said, "Well, come in the next time you have a headache," because they wanted me to be in my headache when I went in. I was like, I can't
Oh,
really plan ahead for
yeah,
that.
yeah,
It's like somehow I don't think that's going to work out for me.
yeah. That's not helpful.
It's like, I've got a headache. Drop everything. It's like people are using the rhythm method. Drop everything. We're gonna have a baby right
Right.
now. It's like, oh my goodness. I know that's a weird comparison, but that's how my brain works. Um, s-
It's a pretty good comparison, I think. Just as unrealistic as well, I think.
so when you're working with people, like, how what kinds of things do you use? What kind of tools do they have? What helps? How do you help people
Yeah.
other than, take 2 aspirin and call me in the morning? But
Well, I mean, that's the everlasting cure, isn't it? No, I'm kidding. So I think it's about, I mean, sometimes, certainly at the beginning of a call, for a lot of people with migraine, whether they're women or men, it's a very gendered disorder. And that doesn't mean one person has a worse experience than the other. It's just different the way it's addressed, um, for some of us than others. But I think one of the reasons that there's been so little research is because it's considered a women's disease. But when men have it, and I know that the LGBTQI plus community has an even worse time. But when men have it, they have a terrible time because it's considered a women's disease. And so but either way, there's a lot of validation that needs to happen. So the first step is really just validating someone's experience, and and empathizing and listening to where they're at. Sometimes undoing the medical gaslighting that's occurred, because there has been a lot, particularly in areas where there's less headache specialists rather than more, or less doctors available rather than more. So perhaps more in rural kind of areas. And so, but, you know, so sometimes there's unpacking of all of that. I do help people with learning to self-advocate for themselves, and also to learn about their condition and what it is. So learning about some of the symptoms. You know, I experience X, Y, and Z. Oh, well, these are symptoms. Oh, well, they might not be symptoms. They might be, but they may not be. Yeah, that might be something else.
Right.
And then, you know, the I don't like using this term, but I haven't yet to come up with another term, but lifestyle changes that we can make. So whatever health condition we have, whether it's heart disease or whatever it is, there's things we do ourselves to manage that, our health, you know, and it's the same with migraine. And so, you know, some of the things that we really need to do is around how much movement we get in a day, if any, and that's really different from person to person. It's about stress management, and by stress management, I don't just mean bad stress, I also mean good stress, because either way, it's a universal trigger. It's now known to be a universal trigger. Managing your sleep, because sleep disruption, whether it's too much sleep or not enough sleep, is also known to be a universal trigger. You know,
I didn't think you could get too much sleep.
right? I know it's unfair, isn't it? So things like, you know, to help people who are listening today, like things like going to bed at the same time every night, having a good sleep schedule. So reading a book for half an hour, a paper book, preferably not on your iPad, but a paper or Kindle or something like that. Not watching TV to the minute you go to bed, not scrolling the internet, you know, those types of things, which I think a lot of us are guilty of, myself included. But reading, you know, reading a book, you know, really having a good bedtime routine, going to bed at the same time every night, having good wind down routine, and then getting up at the same time every morning, even on weekends, you know, keeping that same routine. A migraine brain really likes routine. It doesn't like disruption to your routine. It really finds that hard to manage. So it's about managing your sleep schedule. Now, that's not always possible when you have migraine during the night. Studies show that your sleep is disrupted even if you don't know that it's disrupted. So sometimes if you wake up with an attack, that might be why. But you know, getting that regular sleep over a period of time hopefully will help reduce that. Hopefully. I mean,
it must be hard to go on a vacation where you change time zones.
Yes. Yes, a lot of people find it really hard. Or alternatively, while they're away, things are great, and then when they get back home again, it all goes to the dogs.
Right.
So, right, like,
because you weren't stressed when you were on vacation, right?
Right.
Right.
Exactly. Right.
And it's interesting. It's like too much sleep, too little sleep, too much stress, too little stress, too much moving, too little moving. It's like you're playing Goldilocks and the Three Bears with your whole life.
Exactly. And it's really different from person to person. It's a very individual thing, because all our brains are very individual, annoyingly. So I think I think that's one of the reasons it really helps to have somebody to talk to about it and to work through these things with, and go, oh, this didn't work or whatever. And it's like, well, also, did you try it for long enough? Because if you just do it for 1 week.
I was going to say, how long does it take for you to get your feedback? Like, how long do you have to it's almost like, well, this is causing me, you're having headaches. You're like, is this going to work? Is this going to work? How long do I hold out?
Yeah, and so I mean, for things like, so some of the other things I recommend are things like mindfulness and CBT, which I don't do because I don't work as a therapist here at all. But I do think CBT has for pain management has really good results, as well as so does mindfulness. So these things I really recommend, and these things, they don't happen overnight. You need to stick with them, and you need to stick with them for several months to know. And the same with movement. And I'm not using the word exercise on purpose, because that's also a very individual thing for someone with a health condition like migraine. So, it's about how much can you do and how do you lift that threshold. So it might be that you do 1 minute a day of movement, of something really low impact, and then you just do that for a short period of time, and then you build up really, really slowly to get more and more, because the more that you do, the better off you're going to be on so many levels, as we know.
Right.
Movement and exercise generally is so good for us, for our mood, for our heart health, but also for migraine. But you need to move into that in a way that your body can accept. So sudden exercise for a lot of people with headache disorder is not your friend. So it's about doing it in a way that your body will accept and that you will be able to maintain.
That's super interesting, because last week I was talking to an exercise physiologist, and we weren't talking about headaches, but we were talking about, if you suddenly decided to go out and you thought you needed to do an hour of cardio, regularly to be lose weight and be healthy, and you hadn't done that, it actually affects your metabolism, because she said that when you decide to run out and do this big exercise and you haven't got a baseline and you haven't built up to it, your body suddenly burns a huge number of calories. So it changes everything around and makes you hungrier and slows down your metabolism, because it thinks suddenly that you're basically this, like, oh my God, that's too many at once. It tries to slow down those metabolic changes. So it's interesting that that same thing happens with migraines and with headache disorders. It's like those big sudden changes. I guess it makes sense in some ways. Your body's reacting to, like, stop doing that. That's too much all at one time. And
Right.
if you're on the edge of something, that extra stress, that extra that extra attack of stress, good or bad, is too much for your body to manage. And then the weak link for migraine sufferers, I guess, is a migraine. And the length of time is interesting as well. Also, I was just having this conversation because a lot of people will think, 21 days to change a habit or make a habit. But she was saying it takes 2 to 3 months to have an actual effective habit change. So it's interesting that it correlates with how long it takes for that change to really show itself for people trying to figure out their migraine routines as well.
Right. That's exactly, yeah, it is very interesting, isn't it? And I think
Yeah.
it's fair enough, because we want it to be instant, but it's just not how our bodies work. These things take time. It has to work its way through a whole lot of, neuroplasticity stuff, which I don't fully understand, has to do its thing, its special, neuroscience thing. And so that's my technical term. So I think
The
so,
brain is doing something and it needs time to do it.
it needs time to relearn, and those neuropathways, those pain neuropathways, need to be reset, and it takes time. Your body learns how to receive pain and how to process that pain, and it changes when you're in pain a lot. It changes the neuropathways,
Hmm.
and so you need to change those, and it's not going to happen in 5 minutes. It's going to take some time. So, and you need to be kind to yourself. And, I often like to say to myself and to my friends, would you tell your best friend X, Y, and Z? And so don't tell yourself it's going to happen tomorrow, because it's just not realistic that, this expectation of yourself. Would you have that expectation of your friends? You wouldn't. It's just unrealistic, and it's unfair, that kind of pressure. You've been in pain, or you've had this health condition for however long, however many years. Why would you suddenly expect it to change in, a couple of weeks? It just
Right.
doesn't make any sense to me.
And we are in the land of instant gratification. I mean, I can remember treating a lady one day who had a headache. Hers was a tension headache, I think. I wasn't allowed to diagnose either. And she just turned to me and said, "Well, isn't there a pill for it?" And I just thought, "Oh my gosh." Well, you
Yeah.
could just change your job and turn down the stress levels and do all of that. But we do want that instant. But it's interesting. I think sometimes it depends on what the issue is. Like if you cut yourself and you had stitches, you wouldn't say, "Why isn't it healed right now?" Like
Right.
you would give it time to heal, because you could see it. You could see the progress that it was making. You would know that it had to go through its various stages of healing and change. But because we can't see things like our brains and what they're
Mhm.
doing, we think, "Well, what's taking so long?
Yeah.
I should be better now." Right?
Right. I know, exactly. I know, exactly.
Do you find that, this just popped into my head. Do you find that foods, impact headaches and migraines? Different
Um,
foods?
well, not for me.
No?
I personally, some people really do have found correlation between some foods, and their headache or migraine attacks. Um, the evidence behind food triggers isn't great. I have to say, discussions around food triggers for me is actually a trigger, because it's a great question. I'm really happy that you asked, actually. We put so much emphasis on food triggers, and there is not the greatest scientific evidence behind it. And it's often used as a bit of a blame thing, or it feels like a blame thing. And
Right.
people will go searching, what's my triggers? What's my cause? Not knowing the difference between a cause and a trigger. And sometimes you'll find something. You will, absolutely. And sometimes that thing will change. And sometimes you'll cut stuff out of your diet, and that wasn't a trigger at all. And I've got friends, actually. I volunteer for the Migraine World Summit, and I've got friends who volunteer there. We're all very friendly, and one of them said to me, one of the leaders actually of the summit said they cut something out. I can't remember what it was, if it was chocolate or coffee. I don't know. I can't remember what it was. They cut something out for years and years and years, and then discovered that wasn't a trigger for them at
Oh my
all.
gosh.
So it's a and so that's part of it too. It's a really individual thing. But then there's other people who really absolutely, like my mother-in-law, absolutely, she has red wine, migraine attack, instant, like it's within a very short time.
Wow.
Absolutely, that's a trigger for her. So I think when you know, and it's really obvious. But I think there isn't. I think there are other triggers which they've found to be universal triggers, and the research community and the top doctors are actually moving away from that food trigger theory, more towards a migraine threshold theory. So where you don't necessarily, because if you think about it, are there other health conditions where they're saying to you, what are your triggers? You have asthma, what's your trigger? You have I don't know, epilepsy, what's your trigger? Like whatever. Like they're not asking that question. And it is good to look at what's what might be a trigger, but it's more about what number of things are creating those triggers. So they're looking at a threshold theory. So it's a number of things that create a trigger, create an attack. So it might be like, why is it yesterday I did the same things as today, and today I have an attack, but yesterday I didn't? Like, what's the difference? So it could be that, I don't know, last night I didn't get the best sleep, and there's a storm coming, and there's the weather suddenly changed, and I don't know, maybe I've got a hormonal change that's happened, and I didn't eat on time, so my blood sugar levels are all over the place, which is that in terms of food, that's actually your blood sugar levels is going up and down, so spikes and lows. That's more of a trigger, a common trigger for a bigger number of people than specific food items. There are some things, obviously, with food items, just to go back to your question, like chocolate, coffee. For some people that can be, or for a lot of people that can be triggers, but not for everybody.
Right.
So, like, not for me. I can eat.
Thank goodness.
I can drink as much wine. I mean, I might get a hangover, but I can drink as much wine. I can have, like I can do all of that stuff. So it's really individual, but other people absolutely know. So I think it's really about that threshold theory, about the things you can control and the things you can't control.
Right.
So you can't control the weather. You can't control when your menstrual cycle is coming. You can't control, I don't know, perhaps if your sleep was interrupted, if you've got a baby, or if you had an attack, woke up with an attack in the middle of the night, or whatever it is. But there are other things you can control, like, meditating every day, or your mindfulness routine, or eating on time and eating healthy foods, or doing your gentle movement, or whatever it is. So it's about how you manage the things you do have control over to reduce those attacks.
Right.
And then if you do know that you have a food trigger, like, for example, chocolate, or sugar, or, which can be a huge trigger for a lot of people, then avoiding that, or eating it and knowing, okay, well, it's a conscious choice. I'm an adult. Right. I can make a conscious choice. So, and, we also do know that inflammatory, it's obviously vascular, as well as neurological. And so, inflammatory foods can also be triggers for quite a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
I guess it's, because as a personal trainer, I've always told people, you're an experiment of one. So it's like the extreme case of all of these. This is your menu of things that you're going to start working on. And I guess if you start on one at a time, then you can start to figure out where your just right Goldilocks bed is.
Yeah. Yeah, and there are some really good books. If your listeners do want to try to see if they have food intolerances or triggers, there are some good elimination diets that are specific for migraine that are really, a lot of people find really effective and they love. And I can send you those resources, and you can that you can link them later. Yeah, and because a lot of people do swear by those. I've done eliminations that haven't, as I say, it didn't work for me, but they do work for a lot of people.
But it's good that it showed you that you don't have to worry about those things, right? That takes something off of your list to manage.
Well, exactly, for me personally, but not
Yeah.
because as you said, we're an experiment of one. So I'm only one person, and my client, or whatever, they may have really a number of food triggers, and you wouldn't want to be eating them
Right.
all the
Right.
time because
Exactly.
yeah.
And so I know that it may not be ready yet, but you do have a mindfulness based chronic pain management course coming around, right?
Yes, I do. So I'm a trained facilitator of that course, and I'm hoping to run that at some point during the year. And so that's specifically for chronic pain management, and it's a mindfulness based. It's been adapted. So the mindfulness, the mindfulness courses have been adapted by Dr. Jackie Gardner-Nix, specifically for the chronic pain community, and to help people manage their chronic pain conditions. So it's a slightly different approach, or quite different approach, and it's over a longer period of time, but much shorter sessions, and it's trauma informed and trauma sensitive, because a lot of people with chronic pain have trauma backgrounds, and so a lot of research has gone into
Wow.
trauma, and ensuring that people are safe in this environment, and an awareness of chronic pain and pain conditions generally. So and making sure that people are as safe and welcome as possible. So when you're, some of the differences are about how there's obviously meditation in it, or mindfulness in it, and it's about how you approach those practices, those formal and informal practices, and being kind to yourself. It might be that you need to move. It might be that you need to stand and not sit. It might be that you don't want to shut your eyes. So it might be that focusing on your breath is totally inappropriate for you.
Right.
Excuse me. So it's really a very specific approach, which is it's quite lovely, very
Wow.
different. Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, I'm a meditation teacher, so I'm always a big fan of anything that helps you really tune in and get that sense of what would be helpful for me right now, and what do I need, and what's going on. So I can see how that would be amazing. And doing it in a supportive environment is so much more valuable when you're trying to deal with that kind of thing as well, I can see.
Yeah,
Right. Yeah.
absolutely. Yes, absolutely. But yeah, I think it's so important that it's a supported environment, that it recognizes where people are coming from, um, and validates their experience,
Right.
whatever it is, not just their past experience, but their experience in the moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing. And we are going to make sure that all the information is in the show notes for everyone to grab onto, and make sure that if you suffer from migraines or headaches and you want some help, you get in contact with Natanya, or you might know someone who just needs that help and that extra support. And that's a good way to help them, is to put them in contact with someone instead of letting them suffer. You don't need to suffer needlessly, my friends. Thank you so much, Natanya. But before we wish everyone a lovely day, I'm always interested in some final words of wisdom from my super amazing celebrities.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So I would just like to say that whatever your journey is with headache disorders, whatever your experience is, you're not alone. there's a really big, beautiful, supportive community that's making amazing strides, and you're part of that community. And we would love to welcome you. And if you haven't reached out, please do. And there's the knowledge amongst the people involved is amazing. And so don't need to feel isolated and alone. There's always someone who will be there and will listen.
That's awesome. Amazing. Thank you. Thank you so much, Natanya.
Thank you.
Thank you. My friends in podcast land, share this out with the world. We need to turn down the dials on the pain. And yes, I hope that you are having a fabulous day. And stay well, my friends. I will see you soon. Thank you. Hi, my friend. Thanks so much for listening to this entire podcast. If you found it useful and you're like me and you like helping others, please feel free to share this. Give it a like, give it a comment. If you found something useful in it, there's a chance that someone else will find something useful as well. Also, if you have any questions at all, I can absolutely help, and I would love to help. You can email me at heather@prosperityflowcoaching.com. If you want more of this awesome content, you can follow me on Instagram, Heather Stewart Coaching. You can follow me on Facebook, Prosperity Flow Coaching. And I have a personal request. I want to help as many people as I can with these podcasts. And if you could give me a review, hopefully a good one, if you could share, if you could send this out into the world, I would truly appreciate it. I hope you have an amazing day, and I hope that you find your way to wellness by getting back to me. Take care, my friend.